Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome, friends. Thanks for tuning in for this talk about Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga and how it relates to transformation during these times of trouble. We'll begin with some mantras and then we'll step into the class. We'll chant Om 3 times together and then I'll offer a peace prayer. Om Sahanatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Aditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Together may we move. Together may our studies be brilliant and full of light. May there be much learning and illumination from these studies, and may there be no quarreling amongst any of us. Om, peace, peace, peace. I want to begin by thanking our friends at Song of the Morning for organizing this great event with a clever name. And it's fitting here because downstate in Ypsilanti and Arbor area, we had some snow last night. So getting tuned into the YogaFrost, YogaFrost vibration. So I want to share my screen here. All right. Oh. Okay. YogaFrost satsang with me. So the topic is going to be Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga, navigating negative emotions in times of trouble. So as you all know, right now we're dealing with unprecedented social upheaval from the pandemic and also in regards to the political problems we've been having. And for yogis, this is a unique time for us to be able to deepen our practice. And the main branches of yoga are traditionally known to be Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Bhakti being the path of devotion, love of glorification of God. Jnana Yoga, know thyself, self-inquiry. What is the nature of my mind? And Karma Yoga, selfless service, giving the fruits of our actions up to something larger than ourselves, being non-attached to the fruit of our actions, and doing positive works for the benefit of all. So we're going to explore these things and how they relate to what's going on nowadays and how they might be useful tools for us to bring some transformation. I happened to come across this quote right when I was working on getting this presentation together. It was actually from Integral Yoga. So thank you, Integral Yoga, for this. And it had Gandhi. And I found that life persists in the midst of destruction. And therefore, there must be a higher law than that of destruction. When I think of this, it makes me think about what is the unchanging aspect. And we're going to be discussing that as we get a little bit deeper in here. So Gandhi is focusing on the positive, and then we have this thing, this idea that could appear to be negative, which is impermanence. So all of manifest creation. So what does manifest creation mean? Everything that we're pretty much aware of. This desk, this body, the air, the elements, all of the microbiology, to the stars, planets, and solar system. That's all manifest coming into being, creation. It's been created. So it's all, I use the word entirely purposefully. It's entirely temporary. It's not lasting. It goes away. So suffering comes because we grasp to these impermanent things as if they are permanent. If we can understand that they have an impermanent nature, we can enjoy and appreciate them for what they are. Let them come, let them go, and be naturally in the flow of nature, which is always changing, enjoying the flow of nature. So sometimes people look at this teaching and it can spiral them into more depression, sadness, anxiety. But if we reframe things in the right way, we can always bring it into a positive or at least neutral light, or we can also learn how to be compassionate. Sometimes going to positive is different than going to compassion. So compassion is understanding the complication with a will to transform it towards a more positive outcome or a new position. So yogis, we are all involved in the process of transmuting. Once I was with a friend of mine, and his mom, she was older than us, 30, 40 years, of course, older hippie lady. And I was talking about some life problem. And she looked at me, she's like, "You're a yoga practitioner. Quit complaining. Just transmute that stuff." She's like, "Don't let it get you stuck." It was a pretty funny moment. Because she was right. I was kind of being playing the victim card a little bit. I didn't want to reframe into a positive thing. And almost as soon as she said it, it just instantly shifted me. So I took these pictures from the internet because I liked how they kind of depict cognitive reframing. The one on the left, it shows that we're kind of here, and our perception, it can go either way in any given circumstance. Even something like the snow, which some people will feel negative about, but you can also find a lot of beauty and joy in the snow. So how do we want to cognitively reframe the snow? Do we want to look at it as cold and dark and miserable? Or do we want to look at it as as very small fractals coming out of the sky that create a fluffy, beautiful environment? So you can choose which one. I like this picture of the skull with the flowers growing out of it because it's showing the interconnected nature of what happens with our body once we return back to the earth. We literally are eaten by worms and then turn back into soil and turn into plants, and eventually maybe cycle back into parts of us could literally cycle back into another human at some point. So this is a beautiful way to see the big picture. And it's one thing to look at it intellectually, it's another thing to have experiences that really let us know it is deeply true. So cognitive reframing is very important in Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga because we need to cognitively choose to be engaged in all of these aspects of yoga practice. They don't just naturally occur. We have to discipline our mind, choose to be involved with the devotion or the service or the self-inquiry. And then we can reap the fruits, the transformation that comes from it. So this was also in that email that just happened to synchronistically show up when I was working on this. No seeker should get disheartened by the tests that come. On the other hand, one should feel happy about it. Yes, I'm being tested. This is the opportunity for me to prove my faith and dedication. Spiritual seeking and attaining spiritual goals demand a lot. Swami Satchitananda. So Swami Satchitananda is the founder of Integral Yoga, disciple of Swami Shivananda. He's the one who opened the Woodstock, so he's got some nice teachings to explore. But I really like this quote. Sometimes, though, if people are feeling down and out, it's not always appropriate for us to try to motivate them to feel better. Sometimes just giving compassion, listening ear, letting them feel sad about it, even if they're stuck in a negative cycle. And maybe through us giving some listening and some kindness, they'll transform. So we don't want to use our personal path of transforming to positive as a weapon against those who aren't, which is a pitfall of spiritual path we need to be aware of. So we're going to get into Bhakti Yoga. Now, I'm going to particularly talk about Bhakti Yoga in light of yoga asana and meditation. Sometimes people don't really put those two things together. People do. Not claiming I made any of this up. This is all stuff I've taken from my various teachers. But our devotional practice our devotional longing can very much so be deeply embedded into our yoga asana and meditation practice. So the term or translation devotional surrender is commonly used in the Yoga Sutras of Ishvara Pranidhanava, which means devotional surrender. And there's multiple places it's brought up in the Yoga Sutras. It's part of the second verse, first sutra, where it discusses the key components of Kriya Yoga, Tapaha, Svadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhanava. And then later it says that yoga can be quickly attained only just through devotional mood, through devotional surrender. Purely loving the Supreme Being, you can go to samadhi quick. So you don't need all of this other stuff. Just that can be a full and complete path to experiencing mystical union, cosmic consciousness, God consciousness, enlightenment, nirvana, whatever you want to call it. Just the devotional surrender can bring us there. So a couple technical, or technical meaning like embodied tips that we could use. When we're doing our asana, our hatha yoga practice, ideally, we're watching the breath. We're inhaling, exhaling. From the beginning, we start from the start of our practice to the end of the practice. Ideally, it's a continuous breath meditation the whole time. Every time if mind gets busy, come back to it. So this is like whatever kind of asana. This is not from one sect. Whatever kind of asana you're doing, you can bring this love for the breath into it. So if you really feel that your breath is a mystical experience, because it really actually is, and that it holds so much information. It holds the information of your unconditioned blissful nature. So if we can get to know it, be in relationship to the breath, instead of being in relationship to our thinking, talking, emoting aspect of ourselves, we get to know the breath, and then we get to know how we connect to something larger. Because the breath is bigger than us. It comes and it goes. And if we get into an intimate relationship with it, through loving it, through connecting to it, and simply paying attention to it. One of the ways we feel love in life is when people pay attention and listen. Somebody listens to you with full presence and the non-judgmental mind. It's a beautiful transformational experience. So we can offer that same quality of transformation to our breath. I'm going to watch you, breath. I'm going to love you. I'm going to be thankful for you. So this does relate to pranayama, but it's also something that we can use in our asana. And then also while we're in meditation, if our mind gets busy, we can fill our mind with positive thoughts, thinking thoughts of gratitude for the breath, awe, wonder, looking to know the mysteries inside of the breath. So another little tip in our asana practice is to be very present with sensations, our feelings in our body and our breath, and feel as if God is in you watching the flow of life force. So all of these little movements and little sensations, it's the manifestation of creation in the present moment. So you feel your arm tingle. Wow, it's happening right now. Be so present with it. Watch your breath, feel it. If we can bring this kind of deep, powerful awareness to our asana practice, it makes it very calming and very transformational. And through this, we can start to slow the mind waves. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, what my shirt says. So, see who is the real doer, be the witness. So we're going to talk about this more in the Jnana Yoga section. But this is something that we can bring into our physical asana practice, our seated practice. If you're having a lot of thoughts, say you're thinking about politics, like okay, I'm having this thought. Where is this thought coming from? How is this thought acting in me? How is this thought doing in me? So be the witness of it. Step back. So not disassociating, but being very present to see where these things are coming up from. Try to bring your concentration, your awareness back to the root and back to the source deeper inside of you. So when we're in these watching the witness, this can be a devotional practice. sometimes people want to have a strict line between Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga. And we'll see as we go through this lecture that they all melt into each other. They're all very connected. So going back and looking to see where the mystery of your awareness, your thoughts arise from, that can be a devotional activity. It can be done with love. It can be done with surrender to the Supreme. So this, what is it? My fourth bullet point, let your devotion be natural. You don't need to become something, get a Sanskrit name, wear fancy clothes, wear the right regalia. Just be you. And this is something that I feel strongly about. One thing I really loved, connecting with Song of the Mornings tradition, Yogananda, when he came to the West, he was not trying to make people become Hindus or make people become Indian-like in their behavior. He was trying to teach a scientific method of meditation that is non-sectarian and universal. So anyone of any religion can practice yoga or Kriya Yoga. That's a beautiful thing. So you don't need to take on a new persona, right? You don't need to all of a sudden become this thing. You just need to let yourself experience the profoundness of practice. So you can be an atheist. You could be a fervent Christian and loving the Bible. You could be into mysticism. And you could even enjoy learning about the world's traditions. I've been studying religion since a young age. I've always been curious about it. But we don't need to make ourselves, put any stress on ourselves. So I don't need to adapt someone else's way of devotion. Like how I learned devotion as a child or how I've learned it as an adult. I can let that be my way of devotion and then still enjoy the methods of yoga and meditation. So this is just a thing to avoid creating a new ego, a new persona by trying to take on clothing and appearance, things like that. So just be simple and go deep into meditation and don't worry about all the bells and whistles. It's very distracting, very tempting to the ego, especially if we can get status from looking fancy or having a fancy name. And I've got a lot of Sanskrit names, so I'm making fun of myself here. Offer everything to a power greater than you. So that's one of the basics of Bhakti Yoga, but we can do it in our asana practice. When we get to that mat, we can say, you know, I'm gonna, as I'm doing this forward fold, I'm giving my life force to you, God. I'm surrendering into my breath. I'm surrendering into this. As I'm bringing my hands up in my sun salutation, I'm offering my life force. I'm surrendering. I'm giving everything to you. Every thought that comes, every feeling that comes, offer it back to God. It's all coming from God. Give it all back to God. So this is very compatible with mat practice. So then we have some of the more conventional ways that people think about devotional practices, kirtan, mantra japa, like chanting a mantra over and over again, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, for a certain amount of time. Tears of devotion. All of the great masters talk about crying for longing for God to come to us. So always letting that devotion be moving towards a higher frequency of longing to God. So one teacher that I've spent some time with, bringing your commotion to devotion. So instead of being stuck in the realm of cravings and mind and fear, making it about a longing to connect with the ultimate source. So with this prayerful attitude, we can offer our entire life to the divine fire of consciousness. So I just wanted to talk about this a little bit and how all of these practices, and even japa, we can be doing that during our asana practice. So these yoga is a full system, and these things mix together in a beautiful way. This is a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, fix your mind on me. Dedicate all your actions, desire, ego, and mental effort to me. Completely surrender yourself, being free from expectations and egoism. Fight. So this is when he's encouraging Arjuna to do his duty on the battlefield. So we see here that the karma yoga is to take the action, but he's also to take the action of fighting and to take the action of letting go of his ego. But he's also saying to dedicate it all, to give it to God. So he's asking for the marriage of bhakti and karma. We can see here the devotion to God, and then also taking the actions, the action of surrender, the action of doing our duty. So Arjuna was a warrior, so he was doing his duty. And if you're not familiar with Bhagavad Gita, it's okay. But for those of you who are, you know what I'm talking about. So moving on to the karma yoga, and we'll see that devotion continues in the practice of karma yoga. Being detached, constantly perform your duties efficiently. The person who does so attains the supreme state, being detached. So this is like, could be a little bit of a paradox for some of us. Be detached, but do the duty. Some people will try to use detachment as an excuse to not do anything. Well, I didn't need to go to work today because I was detached. No, you go to work and you are in your work, knowing that you are not the doer, offering all of your actions to a sense of something higher to you, whatever that relationship is. A person of delusion acts with attachment to action, but the wise person acts with detachment for the evolution of the world. So this is a very profound quote about karma yoga. The second half of it, it's saying that the true karma yoga is when we're doing positive actions. So sometimes the mind can get tricky and people can justify adharmic, non-dharmic, unethical, immoral behaviors to doing their duty. And so it's okay, so they're doing karma yoga. But actually, we can see that the wise person acts for the evolution of the world, so positive movement in the world. That's true karma yoga. But a delusion person does it with attachment. There's this movie, Aliens from Spaceship Planet Earth, I think it's called. I might not have the name exactly right, but it was made in the 70s, and it has a lot of the gurus that came over during the time period. It's got Satchitananda, Muktananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Yogi Bhajan, Swami Muktananda, I forget who else. And Donovan is the narrator, the folk musician, Donovan. But there was a guy that they interview in there, and he was talking about he was doing a lot of social change work, trying to do a lot of protesting and things like that. And he was burnt out, completely worn out. And then he started to practice transcendental meditation. And then through his meditation practice, he found a place where he could continue to do his service work of trying to do positive social change, but doing it from a place of detachment, so it wasn't exhausting him. So when we look at the world today and the struggles that we have, be it political or be it complications from COVID, we need to be detached from the goal. We need to know that this is a song that is being played through us, and we need to offer it all back to God. So we start to have suffering or delusion, as it says in this quote, when we have attachment. So when we think that we're going to be able to make a small action and then all of the world's problems are going to go away, or what do they call keyboard warriors? When people get on the internet and they're like fighting with each other and they're typing, like really, like if you can do that and you don't feel exhausted and worn out, be honest with yourself, then that's okay. But if it's probably wearing at your sense of well-being, we need to practice some self-control and try to make positive movement with inner detachment, working towards the good. I heard a quote once, and this is a loose quote from the Dalai Lama: we need to do as much work as we can for the highest possible good all of the time, but be completely detached from the outcome. So always trying to move forward positive agendas, but always letting go of the fruit of the action. So this is easy to talk about, much more profound to put into practice, because we need to check ourselves at every step. All good and evil works are done by the qualities of nature, the gunas, but the egotistical person thinks, I am the doer. So if we look closely at our life, every person is but a part of a chain of events that have led them up to this moment. We are made from food and oxygen, water, the elements, the biochemistry. we were brought here, our parents didn't even really have that much control over who we became when we came out of the womb. The baby showed up how the baby showed up. And then all of the things that happen in our life that bring us to where we are all happening through a miraculous mechanism that is much larger than the individual. So yes, it is true. It is very true that we can make the most out of our situation, and we need to strive to make the most out of our life, and self-effort goes a long way. And at the same time, even that desire for self-effort, where did that come from in its essence? So this is where we start to get into Jnana Yoga. So good and evil works, actions, are in the realm of karma yoga, because it's referring to taking action. Karma yoga means the path of action in a simple translation. And it's saying the egotistical person, the person who's identified with themselves, thinks that they are the doer. But actually, everything is being done by the miraculous expression of cosmic consciousness. Some people call it God. So we need to see that all of this is the divine play, and that we are blessed to be a part of it. Acting as if we have our own intelligence, knowing that it is all actually larger than us. I believe that's a teaching from Emanuel Swedenborg, dusting off my old memory there. So self-inquiry. So as we can see here, just going back, a lot of this in karma yoga, it relates to self-identity, attachment, detachment, and how those things relate to action. So then we get into this world of self-inquiry, which is Jnana Yoga. I should have written Jnana Yoga up there. Self-inquiry and transformation. So how do we get transformation during these difficult times? Through the practice of Jnana Yoga. I love Jnana Yoga. Perhaps it runs in my family because my mom is really into it too. But feel and ask yourself, where is the sense of I arising from? So Jnana Yoga in the Yoga Sutras is referred to as svadhyaya, self-inquiry, study of the self. So it's not study of the self as in what we think of in regular psychology, like, well, because my mom did this when I was 5, I ended up feeling this way when I was 20, and like that's all conditioning. So that's all the play of nature. Jnana Yoga is trying to look back to the root behind all of the play of where the basic sense of self is coming from, going back to the root. And then we can, once we start to, we'll talk more about this, but just a few other ideas that are practices that are used to transform ourselves when we're feeling stuck, is the thought permanent or impermanent. So if we're feeling bound up and wound up about COVID, being able to not see a lot of people. If you feel ready for this kind of practice, and you're not always going to be in the right place to do it, but you can say, who is having this feeling? Where is this feeling coming from? Sit with that. See what happens. And then, well, I feel frustrated because I miss hanging out with people. Okay, so is this a permanent situation or impermanent? Well, it's impermanent, so we know that. Okay, it's impermanent, so it's not lasting. Okay, yeah, it's not lasting. Okay, well, we can find some solace. It's not lasting. Okay, so where is the sense of I in all of this? If you start to look at every thought, every feeling that you have, it all comes back to one thing, and that's you, I, me. Every thought I have comes back to me. Every thought you have comes back to you. We might try to think it's about other people, but the one thing that is in every thought, feeling, and experience is a sense of self. So coming to know that more intimately can help us in many ways, from more surface ways of taking responsibility, and then on deeper levels, starting to see the interconnected play of nature's game, starting to see cosmic awareness, cosmic consciousness. So the last bullet point, we need to seek and know the unchanging qualities of timelessness, spaciousness, and unconditioned inner silence. So if you follow back where your thoughts are coming from, where did this thought arise from? Where is the sense of I in this thought? It will most likely lead you to a place of silence. It might just be for a minute. It might be for a long time. When the thought comes up again, deconstruct it. Where is this thought arising from? Who am I? Where is this coming from? Is it permanent or impermanent? And then when the silence comes, we want to spend time there in that unconditioned inner silence. So some things that are blockages to getting deeper into self-inquiry is the egoic acquisition of material goods. Now, I realize I didn't just say material goods. So for example, Song of the Morning, there's a beautiful retreat center that it's a material manifestation. So, but it's not been made for egoic purposes, it's made for spiritual practice. So when we have a home, we can use it to make a beautiful place to live, to stay warm and cozy and happy and prepare food. But it's when we start to crave excessive material goods, which is a big issue in our culture. And we need to be very alert to not get into the cycle of needing to always have more. Another big emotional blockage is always wanting to have praise from others. Some of us have more issues with this than others, wanting to be the center of attention, wanting to be appreciated. And if we can see this, this is all coming back to the sense of me wanting to feel good, wanting to feel appreciated. So if this gets back to karma yoga, we can offer it, let it go, give it back to God. I see that I want people to have the same opinion as me. I see that I want people to appreciate me. Okay, I see this thought arising. I'm going to offer this thought back, giving it back to whence it came. Craving to maintain physical beauty. Beauty's temporary. Some of us are still young enough that we're still in the game, but eventually it's losing game. So then we do Botox and we spend lots of money and getting a breast implant. Now they do butt jobs, I guess. You know, all of these things to try to maintain youth and physical beauty, which is temporary. So enjoy it while you have it, and then when it's gone, let it go. Enjoy it detached. Cultivating a need for self-importance. So this relates to praise from others, but this is a dangerous thing also in spiritual practice. Is, you know, we're more important than others because we have a yoga and meditation practice, or we have these dharmic traditions. It's very, very, very slippery slope and very easy to fall into. So we need to love people who are different than us, listen to people who have different paths, know them for what they think positively about themselves, and don't know them by what we think negatively about them. When we think negatively of others, it often says more about us than what's really going on with people. So if we can stop and truly connect with somebody, we'll really get to know them. So clinging to life. Now this is a very advanced teaching, and they say that even the very highly advanced yogis have clinging to life. It's natural. We should have clinging to life. You want to live. But when clinging to life creates suffering, when it goes too far. Yoga Sutras talk about it a lot. Mad clinging to life, they call it, is an obstacle to samadhi, to spiritual growth. So we need to know that this is all impermanent, and that this body sheath that we're walking around in, I heard somebody on Facebook referred to it as a meat sack the other day. That was really funny. You might be watching this. It was, she said, I see a lot of people getting very judgmental out here on Facebook. Just remember, we're all walking around in meat sacks. Pretty funny. Okay, so all of these little points that I brought up here, they all lead to suffering. And so to reduce our suffering, we need to know when we fall into these traps and step away from them. So that's self-study. When am I being hung up on my beauty? When am I being hung up on my need for self-importance and being praised? When am I being hung up on needing attention and gratification from others? Or when am I hung up on trying to gather goods? And we can also see how these things relate to the chakras, you know, material goods, to the first chakra, some people might say third, you know, seeking praise from other, that has a negative relationship to the heart center, where you want to be appreciated. So the heart center, believe it or not, has a negative and a positive side. So negative emotions, it's a negative heart feeling. So transcendental state, beyond all of the feelings, is when we start to go into a place where it's not swayed by the cravings of the heart. Now the heart also has a very beautiful positive expression. So we won't go through all the chakras and all that right now, but we could, but we won't. So when I was working on this last night, I was listening to Paramahamsa Pragyanananda, my teacher, and our need is not too much. Our greed has no limit. I think I should have another O on that too. It was on a YouTube video. Our need is not too much. So we don't really need that much, but our greed is limitless. Someone had asked him about living in the world today and accidentally participating in things that are destroying the planet, like all of the things that we have. Like right now, my house is running off of natural gas, you know, and that's probably coming from fracking. It's like, oh gosh, you know, how do we get out of this system? And he was suggesting that we need to really, really check our need for excessive possessions and just be simple. It's very hard when we're used to luxury and opulence to simplify. Although for some people, we might find it nice. So simplify, simplify, simplify. That's really what we need to curb our greed and our grasping for material belongings. So just a little, while we're still on this whole Jnana Yoga, what is permanent and what is impermanent? Nitya and anitya. So this is an idea that we hear a lot more about it in Advaita Vedanta. I think also in other Vedantic schools as well. And nitya is permanence, nitya. Anitya means impermanence. So think about like symmetry, so something being even, and asymmetry being crooked. Asymmetry is without balance. So you put the A and it negates. So same as English as in Sanskrit. Nitya is permanent, anitya is no permanence. So anitya is changing, never stable, it's temporary, but nitya is timeless, formless, eternal, and without changing qualities. So when we're looking at our mind, you can ask, is this thought or is this experience relating to conditioning of time, place, causation, or is it beyond it? So nitya is divine qualities. Nitya has divine qualities like spirit, unchanging truth, pure consciousness, and bliss, absolute. Satchitananda, you may have heard of Satchitananda. Anitya is impermanence. So flexing qualities of nature, cycles of life, birth, death, and rebirth, limited ideas, self-related to temporary body, mind, organism. So permanence and impermanence in Sanskrit is nitya and anitya. Impermanence, so here's the good news. All of this is impermanent. All of this material, it's here to bring us the experience of nitya, of impermanence. Nitya is the quality of soul consciousness. So all of this coming and going, changing forms of the impermanent morphing world is here so that we can have an experience of soul consciousness. This is what yoga and Advaita Vedanta teaches, and this is the state of being aware of how your soul is. Okay, so a little bit more on this whole like Jnana Yoga, self-inquiry. You may have heard of the great Saint Ramana Maharishi, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi, and he was South Indian, enlightened, non-dual master. Became enlightened, I think, at the age of 16, and left a very simple, profound method of self-inquiry. There's a short book, you can get it online. If you just type in Ramana Maharishi, who am I? It will probably be the first thing in the Google search. You can get the free PDF. It's not too many verses, and it's a good short study on self-inquiry, how to ask, who am I? Which is what we've been talking about here a lot. So Nanyar, I'm guessing, I don't think that's Sanskrit, but I don't know, it might be Tamil or some South Indian language. So I took this directly from Ramana Maharishi's teaching, and I'm gonna read it and we'll talk about it a little bit. Basically within this, he's explaining from an Indian philosophy view, which crosses over to Western philosophy and Western sciences as well. The nature of manifest creation. So the disciple asked, who am I? And Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi responded, the gross body, which is composed of the 7 humors, the dhatus. So that's like your body tissues in Ayurveda. Dhatus, like skin, ears, skin, blood, plasma. Yeah. So I am not the 5 cognitive sense organs, the sense of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, which apprehend their respective objects, sound, touch, color, taste, and odor. I am not the 5 cognitive sense organs, the organs of speech, locomotion, grasping, excretion, and procreation, which have as their respective functions speaking, moving, grasping, excreting, and enjoying. I am not the 5 vital airs, prana, etc., which perform respectively the 5 function of in-breathing, etc., out-breathing. I am not even the mind which thinks. Okay, so let's just pause there. Up to this point, he's explained Samkhya cosmology and Ayurveda, and it's actually very closely related to the Nirvana Shaktikam. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham, if you're familiar. I'm not my body's functions. So they're using these kind of technical philosophy things from different Vedic schools. And it was basically like saying to a Westerner, you're not your biochemistry, you're not your flesh, you're not your blood, you're not your family line. You're not your ability to do a task. You're not your ability to have the perception about the task that's being done. So it really like levels. He's saying you're not all of these things, which is like, was kind of confusing, which is good because then the brain starts to slow down. I am not even the mind which thinks. Okay, I am not the niscience too. So niscience is not thinking. So he's saying I'm not the one that I am not even the mind which thinks, and I'm also not the mind which doesn't think. And I'm translating that a little bit because we don't use the word niscience too much these days. I'm not the non-thinking mind which is endowed only with the residual impression of objects, in which there are no objects and no functions. I am not. So he's saying I'm none of these things. I'm not even the non-thinking mind. So even the subtle, quiet mind. So he's going to a real deep teaching. I'm not the thinking mind. I'm not my senses. So then the second verse, if I am none of these, then who am I? And then he responds, after negating all of the above mentioned as not this, the answer which alone remains, that I am, or I am that, we could say. If I am none of these external experiences of the body, mind, senses, microbiology, then who am I? And he says, once you've gone back and you've gotten rid of all of this by saying not this, neti in Sanskrit, I am that. So what is this? This is a profound experience that happens through deep inquiry, asking these questions over and over again. So if we're engaged in this process of Jnana Yoga, of self-inquiry, this is they say the ultimate elixir to reduce suffering. Tat tvamasi, I am that. Often the more old English is thou art that. I am that is one of the Mahavakyas from the Chandyoga Upanishad. So this is what Maharishi, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi is saying, is we are not all of these sense organs, but we are actually I am that. So this is like a Zen koan. What's the sound of one hand clapping? Go deeper. So with that, you know, in times of suffering and contraction economically and sociologically, we might feel like a pile of dookie, a pile of poo. And the beautiful thing about compost, about poop, is that it can become beautiful flowers and beautiful compost. I was with some people at a horse farm the day after Christmas. Our friend has some horses, and we were riding through the snow on a 1-horse open sleigh. it was two horses, and we had like a metal roof, and then we were like bouncing through the snow. It was really fun. So there was a big pile of horse poop sitting there, and one of the people with us was looking at it, and I said, "That's life." And he was kind of shocked. I was like, "That's life." He's like, "You mean life shit?" And I was like, "No, no." I'm like, this is where the flowers will grow from. This is where the vegetables will grow from. So this suffering, at the moment when we're only locked into the temporary, we see the dookie and we think that that's that and that's all. But no, actually it contains all of the nutrients once it goes through a transformational process to grow the beautiful flower. So, this might seem kind of funny. Oh, you put things with poop up, but it's profound. Our garden that I started during COVID, oh my gosh, it was the most amazing garden this year. And people were like, "What did you do? Did you use chemicals and GMO seeds?" No, our friend at the horse farm, he brought us a bunch of horse manure. And then another friend of mine, he brought me compost. He does permaculture, landscaping, and nurture and nature seeds. He'd appreciate the sales. Get some organic seeds, nature and nurture seeds. They're in Ann Arbor or Dexter. They've got great products. But he hooked me up with some compost that came from plants decaying. So, the leaves die, the plants die, and nice big pile of compost. And we had an amazing garden this year. Things were just growing like gangbusters. We had gigantic pumpkins, and then we had a baby come, and we had our baby by the pumpkin. It was great. So from these stinky, disgusting things, it actually has all of these other parts in them. So through the practice of Jnana, Bhakti, and Karma Yoga, we can see that in the garbage, I see a rose. In the rose, I see the garbage. Everything is in transformation. Even permanence is impermanent. In the garbage, I see a rose. In the rose, I see the garbage. Everything is in transformation. Even permanence is impermanent. The great Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh. And this continues on, and we're going to read it, except for this. Whenever we throw something into the, I can't see because my screen share thing's blocking it, in the garbage, can the compost or the recycling, it can smell terrible. Rotting organic matter smells especially terrible. But it can also become rich compost for fertilizing the garden. The fragrant rose and the stinking garbage are two sides of existence. Without one, the other cannot be. Everything is in transformation. The rose that wilts after 6 days will become part of the garbage. And after 6 months, the garbage is transformed into a rose. When we speak of impermanence, we understand that everything is in transformation. This becomes that, and that becomes this. Tatvamasi. Looking deeply, we can contemplate one thing and see everything else in it. Looking deeply, we can contemplate one thing and see everything else in it. So beautiful. We are not disturbed by change when we see the interconnectedness and continuity of all things. It is not that the life of any individual is permanent, but that life itself continues. When we identify ourselves with life and go beyond the boundaries of a separate identity, we shall be able to see permanence in the impermanent and the rose in the garden. Thich Nhat Hanh. The world we have, a Buddhist approach to peace and ecology. We need great peace methods today. We need to listen deeply. We need to love people who are different than us. We need to see the transformation, the pain of transformation, the death is leading to beautiful roses growing in the garden of our consciousness. So going back, in the garbage, I see a rose. In the rose, I see the garbage. Everything is in transformation. Even permanence is impermanence. So friends, as we go through these times of transformation in our culture, with environmental pressures, political, and pandemic, we need to see that this transformation is hiding flowers. Even in deep suffering, we can have compassion in that moment, knowing that it's impermanent can ease the pain. So I hope that you found some of these ideas useful, that we've explored these deep, profound teachings. And if you'd like to stay in touch, here's my contact info. And I'm a yoga therapist and Ayurvedic consultant and massage therapist. That's mostly what I do for work, as well as teaching yoga. But you can find out if you'd like to have a one-on-one consultation, either for yoga therapy or your body, for Ayurveda or meditation. If you're working with your meditation practice, we can do that online until the pandemic. And then I've got an online teaching portal, A2 Massage Yoga at mykajabi.com. And there's some in-depth philosophy blogs that are free. There's some videos that are free. There's a couple things that are paid. So go get those free downloads there. Check it out. You can deepen your studies. There's some really juicy, rich content in there. I've also been working with Master High at Triple Crane Retreat Center to help them develop their programming. They're in Chelsea. So if you want to check out what we're doing over there, we're getting ready to continue offering the yoga and meditation retreats that they do monthly on the weekends, and then quarterly, where we do longer sits. And they mix their traditional Chinese Buddhist, and they have joined with the yoga lineage from Kripalananda, and they use the energy practices of yoga to deepen long Buddhist sitting meditations. So I've been helping them with a lot of administrative work and deepening my relationship. So you can check that out there. And again, if you want to just email me, if you have any questions, if you want to get together and do some kirtan or something like that, you can email me. So this is me sharing what I'm doing with you all. And I hope that this talk has been useful if you've made it all the way through. And again, I want to thank the people at Song of the Morning and those who are organizing YogaFrost, Monica and Brian and everybody, Justine, and then the board members, Linda and Sam and all of the other great people that I love up at Song of the Morning. So hope everyone's doing great, and keep on keeping on, keep breathing deep, keep stretching, sitting in meditation, using these powerful external techniques, but remember to use these mental techniques to really deepen the power of the meditation and the asana. Because when we use Bhakti, Karma, and Jnana Yoga, that's when we really get the juice. And then we can start to see the flower in the midst of the suffering, because they're non-different. They're eternally bound with each other. So thank you, friends, for going this far with me. And we'll do some closing chants. Om Masato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Masato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Masato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to knowledge of immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May all beings in all times, places, and locations, and all dimensions, all be happy and free, free from suffering. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om, Tat Sat Om. This is Om, that is Om, everything is Om. Hari Om. Thank you, friends. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.